Welcome back to another episode of Upshift Creek with me, Ollie Pettigrew, and my esteemed co-hosts Nick Calderon and Ryan Sander. Welcome back to the show, guys.
Yeah, vroom vroom, bitches. Let's do this.
And we finally actually have a race to talk about, and there is a lot to talk about. Come on, we have to get right out in front of it. We were all on board the Alonso hype train. Turns out the hype was real.
It sure was. And man, that green car looked so good. And I was excited to see some really honest to goodness racing. I wasn't sure that the hype train was real, to be honest, but seeing Alonso just duke it out like Top Gun fighters towards the end there, I was on the edge of my seat. That is the kind of Formula One racing that generates new fans, and it just thrills us old fans.
I genuinely thought Alonso had it. Nick and I spoke before qualifying, and I was like, buddy, he's going to be on pole. And Nick was like, I think Red Bull has just been sandbagging the entire time. And it's crushing me to tell you this, but it turns out Nick Calderon was right, because all through quali, it was looking amazing. And then suddenly, Q3, and the race starts. Goodbye, Red Bull. Bye. Have a nice race.
Yeah. And not only goodbye Red Bull, but goodbye Max. I swear to God, if you pull up one of those close-up shots of Max in the driver's seat, you can see a little red glint in his eye behind that visor. The man is absolutely mechanical. He is a cyborg. He is biomechanical. He's like the guy, the avatar. He gets into the car and he must, like, his legs just meld into the carbon fiber. He is one with that car. I have never seen anything like it. And the other drivers and teams on the grid are befuddled. He's gone. At one point, there was 37-second gap. Yeah. Come on.
It was wild. What did you think of the race, Ryan?
It was so exciting going into this because you never know what's going to happen even after watching qualifying. But I had such a blast watching Alonso just have the most fun time driving that car on that track. Especially getting to hear his chatter over the radio is just an absolute treat.
You could tell he was smiling. You know, he goes, oh, this car is a joy to drive. And like, you know, you got him taking down him and Lewis. That was a great bit of the race. I mean, like, honestly, I haven't seen those guys dueling side by side for like a decade. It was brought back some quality memories from McLaren.
Yeah, and they're not friends. I think it was either Crofty or Brundle said they're not on each other's Christmas card lists, but they kept it clean. You know, it was close, fast F1 style racing that was clean. You know, that was epic stuff.
It was great stuff. Before we get to talking about the winners, though, I think we need to talk about the losers of this particular race. There are a few bad stories or unfortunate stories, but I think we can all agree that the biggest losers of the entire race have to be poor McLaren.
Yeah.
Piastri, DNF, and Lando's car trying to set some sort of record for the amount of pit stops you can have in one race.
Yeah, Ollie, I'm going to create a trophy here on our episode and give the Upshift Creek Award to Oscar Piastri, who starts off in a beleaguered McLaren after absolutely firebombing his relationship with Alpine, burning every single bridge, you know, signing his contract with McLaren and driving an orange pig at the back of the field that eventually just broke down. And to me, that is a big story. McLaren is not a dog by any means, but they looked terrible.
It didn't look great, though. There was a small little, you know, silver lining, because as much as Lando's car was sucking, there was that opportunity that came later in the race where he was keeping up with Lewis and Carlos while they were racing, that I was like, okay, well, what's going on here?
That was strange. I noticed that too. You know, he got lapped by all those cars, and I expected to just see him disappear off into the sunset, but you kept seeing that orange car hanging right there with the leaders of the pack. And I don't understand that. Maybe one of our listeners can, or our listener can figure out how that was possible.
What's the rule there? Doesn't that car like have to get out of the way to not obstruct the racing? Like, you can't just kind of slow them down. Like,
well, no. So if you're in the way, right, and they're lapping, you got to get out of the way. But he has all the rights to unlap himself if he is quicker. And I honestly thought he was going to mix it up with Lewis at some point. So no, you are allowed. If the other guys are just messing around in front of you and getting slow, you can take your place back and get on with your race. It is your race. Another unfortunate story. So you've given it the Upshift Creek Award to Piastri. I can see that. I could see that. Though I think a pretty strong contender for that would have been Ocon. His race was a comedy of errors. I could not believe it was 20 seconds worth of different penalties handed his way that I was like, is this a joke? Are we being trolled right now?
F1's bad boy.
Another 5-second penalty. I don't know if that was just miscommunication, lack of concentration, what was going on there. Hopefully just growing pains for the new season. But yeah, that was all just ugly and hard to watch. And listening to the team radio on all of that, yeah. We got another penalty.
Yeah, so it'll be 15 seconds this time. Let's not get into this one. But the stewards were just like, "This is amazing. We get so many penalties." Clearly not a fan of the French. I thought Haas was pretty disappointing. They looked so good in practice, and I thought like there was going to be something from Nico and Quali, but they kind of were a bit of a non-event.
Yeah, I was disappointed by that too. I didn't expect a whole lot, but you're right. There were certain things in preseason and qualifying that you're just like, ooh, Haas has got a little bit racy,
a bit spicy,
yeah. But look, they didn't cost Gene any more money. You know, Gunther didn't have to get on the phone with Gene to explain, another multi-million-dollar crash. They kept it clean, and everybody wants to see these guys succeed.
Yeah, they're such a true underdog, and Gunther just is becoming so good at just eating shit sandwiches.
It's
hopefully not too many. Though, let's be honest, there was another sandwich being eaten almost predictably. This is actually my fault. I apologize to Charles Leclerc that literally 13 seconds before his car blew up, I said, you know what? Usually by this point, somebody's car's blown up in the first race. Oh, boo! Lap 41. Oh, look what's happening. It's Ferrari again.
The poor guy, though. How much has Charles matured? You know,
I think he's aged. I don't know if it's maturing.
But, he didn't even really seem to be that upset by it. He parked the car in a perfect spot. He just was like, yep. That's about, he looked at his watch and was like, that right on time, a Ferrari mechanical failure. That was disappointing. My wife jumped out of her seat. She's a huge Charles fan. But it's almost like, okay, we're right on time. We're par for the course.
Right.
Bummer. Such a bummer.
Well, another bit of a bummer, because honestly, Red Bull, they were on another level. The Aston Martins, to me, look like the second fastest car out there. Ferrari's third, and quite surprisingly, Mercedes, they just were not fast enough. They were 5th and 7th in the end, which, considering, is not bad. But it's not what we expect from Mercedes, is it?
No, that's hard to watch. And I can't imagine Toto Wolff being okay with that for much longer. You've got the arguably the greatest driver of all time struggling in the midfield there in a Mercedes. This is a team that has dominated for years, and that I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you fix the Mercedes issue. If you take Red Bull out of the equation, if you take 1-2 and you look at the rest of the field, you look at the rest of the 9 teams, you've got a pretty tight race there. But still, Mercedes, where they are, that's concerning.
Yeah, it's almost like hang on, then just put in the line about best of the rest and we're good.
It's almost like they're fighting for best of the rest, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, I can't believe we're saying that, but I completely agree.
Do you think Toto Wolff just finishes up that race and gets into his G-Wagon and just puts on some screamo metal and just screams at the top of his lungs and
9!
Rammstein? Because I would.
It is fun to think about.
Nick, as a Mercedes fan, it pains me to say this, but I think I agree with you. They seem to me to be like the 4th fastest out on track. I mean, Aston, I think, is the 2nd fastest out there.
Can that pace be sustained, though? Let's not forget, Haas started pretty good last year. And then as the season went on, things just kind of, tumbled back into place. Can Aston Martin stay with the pace of development throughout the year? Can they keep their development on the car going? Can they keep up with the pace of the expense of all of that?
Well, they're not short of cash.
Well, okay, sure enough.
They got that billionaire's deep pockets.
And I think I asked this last time, but I just don't know how, like, what the teams are able to change race to race, like what those budgetary constraints, if it's just like adjusting a wing here and there, or like tire pressure or this and that. I don't know what they're legally allowed to change, I suppose.
Well, you can do that. But if you have to build a new wing, you've got to completely fabricate it. If you're going to build a new wing mirror, you've got to completely fabricate it. McLaren's already talking about the upgrades coming in Baku, because clearly whatever they're doing isn't working. The only limit really now is the amount of money you can spend, as we learned if you watch Drive to Survive, Red Bull overspending on caviar or something last year.
Allegedly.
I'm thinking about that sinking feeling that must be if you are McLaren and you're just you have no pace. You're a driver. You're a Lando Norris, and you're standing on the accelerator, and you're just getting passed. Although, did you guys notice at the end of the race? Right,
yes.
I know where you're going. Go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Exactly that. They've topped him up for like the 5th time, and then it was Hamilton and Sainz dueling, and Norris right there. So we can see that the McLaren has pace. Maybe once it gets a lower fuel load or something. So they've got it somewhere. As long as the car keeps running, maybe it's not as bad as it seems.
That was really interesting because I saw them sail by, Norris, but there was a few of those shots where I'm like, well, wait, he's right there. The McLaren is right there. He's not getting blitzed. He's not getting dropped. So what is that? That was so weird. And again, if you're the McLaren, Zach Brown or any of the other management people, that sinking feeling of, oh my gosh, what are we doing back here?
But kind of like you were saying, and you kind of see in qualifying as well, is that there was 10 cars separated by 100th of a second. It is way closer than it was last year. And, if you, again, discount Red Bull, all 9 teams are really close together, and then there's Red Bull.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, and Ryan, think about this as a new fan. Think about none of these cars can pull like stuff from a parts bin. You've got 10 different teams building bespoke stuff, every part, all handcrafted on 20 different cars. And like Ollie said, they're all running within about a second of each other. That is pretty mind-boggling.
Trying to lead up to this weekend, and I watched most of the season last year, but I'm now watching the current season of Drive to Survive. And I think it's the first race, and all of the drivers are walking around and looking at each other's cars, and they're just like, wow, that looks really fast. And I'm like, what the hell are they looking at? They all look exactly.
The differences are subtle, but sometimes they make all the difference. Well, we've been talking about the losers. Let's talk about the winning stories of Bahrain. And I think the one we all want to talk about, the one that everybody's talking about, is Fernando Alonso. He had a rubbish start, and then as a result had to pass Russell in a Mercedes, Bottas, Lewis in a Mercedes. That was a great sequence of corners. And he took Sainz in a Ferrari. I mean, he was just bang, 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 one after the other. It was so fun to watch.
That kind of driving is what makes Formula One fans. It's those sequences, however brief they may be. It's those Top Gun battles. These guys in these jet rocket ships of cars going at it wheel to wheel. That's when you see that. You're like, that's what I'm here for. Give me more of that. And Alonso just delivered, and the car and the team delivered. Mike Crack delivered.
It always does, Nicholas. It always does.
Yes, it does.
Well, see, the thing about him dueling with Russell, dueling with Sainz, dueling with Lewis, he never actually hit any of them. Came close. The only person that actually did hit him was Stroll.
Yeah. And I love how he poor guy kept like, who hit me? Are there penalties? And the team was just like,
They interviewed him after the race, and he's like Will Ferrell in that movie where he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
It was hilarious watching him always like check up on like, what's being done about whoever ran into it. Nothing's being done, buddy. Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah, and nothing will be done. Daddy's boy made a little mistake. Although that's a hard one to really penalize. When you watch the replay, Alonso came cutting hard back to the right. Stroll was going into that corner hot, but a split second before the turn was his. So it is, as the stewards would say, a racing incident.
Right, and I would also say that Daddy's little boy also did a pretty respectable race. I mean, he ended up, was it not 6th place, right?
Yeah. And with pins in his wrists and stuff, I'm not a big Stroll fan here, I'll admit that, but I definitely have to give the guy credit for sure, for missing practice, driving injured. But again, maybe that's just the credit to how quick that car is.
These guys are driving these cars to the full limits. To have even like a Band-Aid on your finger seems like super extreme. Like you have to be in peak physical condition to have both your hands or your wrists just shattered to pieces and operate this car at like 200 miles an hour is
well, do you really need your wrists to drive a car, right? My dad used to drive with his knees all the time. You know what I mean? I'm like, maybe that's what Stroll was doing.
Could be, yeah. I would like to focus on another winner in my mind, and I'll grant him my Upshift Award this week, and I'm going to give that to Logan Sargent.
Oh, interesting. Tell me why.
Well, I bagged on him in our first episode a little bit, saying that he was likely there, and I don't back away from it. But I still think Logan Sargent is there because he's an American, and we have to support all of this American interest in F1. Not going to back away from that. However, he kept that Williams on track. He raced it pretty well. He raced it smart. What did he wind up 13th? Was it, Ollie? I don't
12th. 12th for Sargent and 10th for Albon.
Yeah, I mean, 2 spots out of points in a Williams. I think that's credit to Williams. I think they've made some decent improvements on their car. And I got to give it to Logan Sargent. Again, he did not make any mistakes, ran a clean race, and got pretty damn close to the points.
It was a great showing from Williams. But one story that I want to I will counter to your Sargent one. It's the one that no one's talking about because everyone's talking about Alonso, is Pierre Gasly went from last to 9th. And, he's like, I overtook 11 people. Anyone? Just no? We're all talking about Alonso? Okay, well done, Fernando. Oh.
If he would have had more fun on the radio, we would be having a different conversation. He was just passing all these people going, wee. I think it could be a little more spicy. That's all I'm saying.
Because that Alpha wasn't looking great. Oh, no, he's Alpine, right? The Alpines weren't looking too great. Ocon was having just an absolute nightmare of a race, but Gasly just very quietly got down to it and just hammered through the pack. It was really impressive.
You know what? You're right, Ollie. I hadn't really paid attention to that. He did have a little bit of attrition working in his favor to bump him up a little bit, but yeah, okay. I'm with you on that one. We can give Gasly an Upshift Award to get into the points. Sure.
Yeah, I guess those are all just really participant awards because let's talk about the giant Red Bull-sized bull elephant in the room. Red Bull's speed was terrifying. They did it. I mean, they went softs and smoked everyone who was switching off tires. I couldn't believe it. And by the end of it, they were almost a second a lap up on Mercedes. They were like 30 seconds up the road from Ferrari. This is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what to think about that. Have they really just gotten it so absolutely right? Is there? I mean, I guess I understand maybe where Toto and guys like Zach Brown and some of the others are coming from and saying, wait a minute, there must be some kind of cheating going on here. That there's no way they could be that much faster. I understand why those thoughts come into their minds, whether it's happening or not. I don't think Red Bull's doing anything salacious, pernicious, against the rules. I don't think I used any of those words right. But go with it anyway.
It sounded really good though.
It did. Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. Go with it.
I was trying to sound smart, but I don't know. I mean, do you want to speculate here? I know it's early in the season, but what the hell is going on?
Well, is it just logical that everyone seems to have made a 1 second, 2 second gain, and the car that was faster than all of them has made a 1 second gain as well? Have they just made the same amount of improvements as everybody else, but left everybody behind?
Yeah.
I will say is like, as an outsider now, this being like my second season watching it, like last year it was fun to see Max just dominate, but this year I'm like so kind of over it. It just makes that seem so boring in the grand scheme of things. But I love watching the midfield now more than ever because it's just way more exciting to watch these guys battle it out instead of Max 30 seconds ahead of Checo, and it's just insane.
Now you know how difficult it must be to be, the FIA boss Ben Al Salamed, I think, has been something. I'm close.
Close enough. Keep going.
Close enough. The
Steve.
new FIA director. You know, how do you make these? How do you change these rules? How do you keep it spicy for the viewer? I agree. I'm a huge Red Bull fan. I love Max, but I don't want to see him, giddy up down the road week after week. And it looks like, barring mechanical failures, it looks like the Bull's going to charge.
And that's the first time he's won the Bahrain Grand Prix as well. So like, tick that. And maybe the thing that we can hold on to is that whoever won the first race of the season in the last 6 years hasn't won the championship. So, statistically, maybe Max is screwed. We're like, yeah, he won. Now he'll never win the championship. I'm wishful thinking.
Bite your tongue.
Because I was just catching up on the news today. I mean, even now, after one race, George Russell is being quoted as saying, well, it'd be crazy if Red Bull doesn't win every race, and I think we just have to look ahead to next season. I'm like, one race in?
Oh my God, who throws in the towel that fast?
Right. It's a little fatalistic there, don't you think, George?
Yeah, great confidence in your car there. Toto's is like, maybe we get somebody else. Let's get Bottas back.
Oh God.
It was nice seeing Mick Schumacher in the garage.
Yeah.
Yep. No, it's good. And it's interesting. I didn't see Danny Rick because, Red Bull is 100% holding on to Danny Rick. Just every time Perez drops down the timesheets, they're going to be like going, that guy over there? He might be able to drive quicker. It's like, he's literally there, I think, just to scare Perez into being even quicker.
Wow, you think so? You think they're that dastardly?
Yes, it's Red Bull. Those guys, it's just win at all costs. There's no friends at all whatsoever. It's deliver or get out.
Okay. And then what's Mercedes?
But Mercedes don't seem as ruthless.
The same way.
No. Christian Horner for me. See, Toto Wolff is the kind of guy that says, yeah, I told Russell that one day he'd drive for us and he will. And he did. Christian Horner, with Red Bull, all those guys, that's why they're so good. They're like the Iceman of a team. You know what I mean? It's just they're the Val Kilmer of a team.
Yeah, which one's the better Bond villain?
But Christian Horner's so soft and cuddly, and he's married to a Spice Girl. I mean, he's a teddy bear of the principles,
No, Gunther is the teddy bear of the principles. He's my boy. He's the most famous guy in Haas for sure. But how would you rate the race? I mean, I thought for the first sort of 30, 40 laps, it was, apart from everything that Alonso was doing, seemed like a sort of a relatively normal race. But then it kind of got a bit more interesting towards the end, didn't it? Right around Leclerc's blow up, suddenly the last 20 laps got a bit spicy.
Yeah. There was a lull in the middle there when management started to come into play, with people watching tires and temperatures and things like that. And that's Formula One. When you really begin to appreciate what the sport is, you understand that those laps, somewhere in the 20 to 35, 40 range, that's just the guys doing their job to make sure that they're going to be racy at the end. And I, although it can seem a little bit boring, I do find that intriguing as well. When you were listening to what Alonso, the broadcaster saying, Alonso's not only racing his car and driving his race, he's thinking about what everybody else is doing on the track, where they are, what's their position, what kind of tires they're in, the degradation of their tires. So
what's going to be for dinner? He sounded so calm on the radio, didn't he? He's like, oh, where's Lance doing? Oh, he is doing well. What is happening later? Maybe you guys want to watch a movie? Oh, look out. And he's driving at 200 miles an hour. I'd be freaking out.
You're going to have to work on your Spanish accent, Ollie.
That was a perfect Spanish accent. What are you talking about?
We'll cut that.
What do you guys feel about Ferrari just giving up? Because I was surprised for their last tires that they didn't go under the softs like they wanted. They were like, no, we're just settling for where we are. Because what if something happened and then something did happen? What if that VSC had become a full safety car and then Sainz was on the softs with two hards in front of him? They could have mixed it up, but they didn't even bother trying. They just said, no, we're fine with third. And they didn't even get that.
Yeah, that smacks to me of Vasseur. I think that's the way Frederick Vasseur, the new team principal of Ferrari, manages things. And it was very different from what we saw last year in terms of strategy. But I was at least happy that a decision was made. A definitive decision on strategy was made. It was not being questioned.
Yeah.
Decision made. So
it was the we are thinking of putting you onto Hearts question. That was so weird last year. Straight up just asking the drivers, well, what do you think? I don't know. Well, what do you guys think? Oh, let's just bang on the Hards then.
I think there's something very smart about looking at the cards you're dealt, looking at where you are and saying, okay, we could bang our head against the wall and still get third. And what's the point? These guys are smart. The strategists are smart. The mathematicians, they all know much more than what three guys in their living rooms know.
They're just there with a magic 8-ball. Should we go for Hards? Oh, it does not look good.
So I think they made the right choice. Why, race one, you learned a lot. As much as it is a race, it's also about learning. I think they made the right call there, believe it or not. And you live to fight another day, and you save your gear.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I mean, people may have wondered why they just kept Lando Norris out on track for the entire race, kept topping up his pneumatics and stuff. Why? Because it's free testing. Yeah. It's like, why not? Just keep the car out there, get as much data as you can, and maybe that's going to be the little thing that can help figure out why the car isn't working just the way it is.
Fair point. Yeah.
For sure. You just got to be careful you're not in danger, right? You don't want to get that. What is the black and orange flag that'll...
the meatball. You don't want the meatball.
Yeah.
You're the Nikita Mazepin flag. That's what I like to think about that one.
That's hurtful.
He was a liability, that guy. Now, look, one thing was those Aston Martin, they were looking cracking in the corners. They really were making up a lot of time in the corners. The next race is Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, which has, I believe, 125 corners. It looks like somebody's signature. It's absolutely the craziest track of them all. There's almost no straight. It's all corners. Do you reckon that could maybe just give them that little bit more to sort of bring the race to Red Bull?
Don't ask me. What's your prediction? You seem to have something on the tip of your tongue that you want to say here, Ollie.
I think, all right, look, I am going to become the conductor of the hype train for Fernando Alonso. I'm freaking thrilled that he's got a car that can do it. I think the Astons are quicker than everyone else apart from Red Bull. I think with these corners, I think you're going to be seeing Alonso right up there. I think you'll see him up there in qualifying. I think you're going to see him up there in the race. And is it already race day yet? Can we race yet? Is it time for another race?
He's quickly become like Formula One's favorite daddy.
Yeah.
Oh, well, one thing as well, we can't go another minute without talking about Reddit as well. If you guys don't know, Reddit has an incredible Formula One subreddit, which is fantastic. But my favorite one, all of our favorite ones, is Formula Dank, where the memes come, and they were coming thick and fast, even during the race. I think the one that boils it down the absolute best is the one that Ryan sent. This one.
Yeah.
That one is just, that's all it was. You felt like everybody else was an also ran and everyone just celebrated Alonso. It was so funny.
I feel like I willed this into existence. It's all I was thinking about, seeing him get on the podium, just having an absolute blast. And you have begrudgingly shaking champagne, and it's just, you have a lot of rushing.
Well, it's like what we talked about at the beginning. Everybody's just so thirsty for that kind of excitement and exuberance on the podium. So I hope you're right. I want to get on board the hype train as well. And I'm curious to see if a healthy Lance Stroll can match Alonso's times.
We'll see. Because speaking of Lance Stroll, another great meme, this one right here, it's a picture of Lawrence hugging Alonso saying, finally, I have the son I always wanted.
Oh, God.
These guys are savage, man.
Devastating.
It's so true, though. I mean, come on. This is a real interesting hypothetical. I was watching the race, right? Lawrence, he bought this team. Why? Because he wants his son to win the world championship. What if Alonso's running away with it? I mean, just team orders from the billionaire, the guy paying the bills. Do you reckon that could come into play?
I mean, gosh, that's fun to think about.
It doesn't, but there's no reason it could. I mean,
right.
Gotta go where the money is, Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. Because if the higher the team scores, the more money they get in purse money at the end of the year. And we've said it a million times, Formula One is super expensive. So if you can bank a few $1 million by finishing fourth instead of fifth or third instead of fourth, who cares who's behind the wheel at that point?
I agree. Did you notice in the post-race interview, Alonso comes, what was the first thing he said? Oh, that is great. I just want to point out that Lance did really well with his broken wrist to finish in 6th place. Like, the first thing he did was compliment the boss's son. I'm like, Fernando's playing the game well.
Yeah, he is. He's no amateur. He knows exactly how to play the game. I noticed that too, and I was like, well done, son.
So, all right, looking ahead to Saudi Arabia, you've heard my predictions. What are you guys thinking?
Ryan, go ahead. I want to.
Yeah, like, I don't really have enough. I can just give you my. I hope to see more out of, more out of Alonso, and I hope to also see more out of Mercedes. I'm such a fan of their team, and I just really, I don't know. I just want to see competition between the top of the grid.
I see Leclerc qualifying very well, maybe even first, as he has done in the past. I think, however, I think Max is gonna blitz again. I think Max is gonna blitz out to first, and I put Alonso. Let's see, Max first, Charles second, Perez third, Alonso, George fourth, Alonso fifth.
Ooh, no, I'm putting Alonso on the podium.
Okay. All right.
What about you, Ryan? Where's Alonso going to finish? Come on.
Hopefully first. Realistically, 4th or 5th.
Okay. All right. Well, look, this has been great catching up. Bahrain was a great race. I'm really looking forward to Jeddah. That is honestly, has been the last few years, an absolute banger of a race. Fingers crossed that we have a little bit of chaos because there's a lot of walls, there's a lot of turns. The chances for a safety car is massive. And we'll see who ends up Upshift Creek without a paddle next week.